Welcome to My Magical Garden Quilt-Along Month 4. Today we're going to be learning how to use our Hearts and More small set of tools. That's templates A and B from the small set. And we're going to be learning some new shapes this month. We're going to be focusing in block 7 on the curved edge heart shape. But we're not going to forget about our Leaves Galore tools. And we're going to be learning this new shape, which is our lemon-shaped leaf. From the inside of the heart chain ring, we have an extra heart. That extra heart is going to be featured in the, in the second block. The center of this block has those leftover heart pieces. Another shape that we're going to be adding this month are the six-petal flowers. So I'm really excited to introduce these two new tools to you this month and show you all that they can do. Pairing those with our Leaves Galore tools and the shapes that we've already cut make these beautiful blocks. Today we're showing you these blocks in the beautiful bright combination that's on a solid background fabric. But we also have our pieced fabric backgrounds with the Island Batik fabrics. It's really fun on our Facebook group to see all the beautiful color combinations that you have come up with for your own quilts. So keep sharing those photos and join me in the lessons this month. The lemon-shaped leaves we're going to be cutting from 12.5-inch wide fabric. If I center that 12.5-inch wide fabric on a centering line right here, it's going to be easier for me. So I've actually gone 6¼ inches up here, 6¼ inches down from that centering line, and I'm going to use my Petite Leaves Galore template. The Petite Leaves Galore template is the perfect size to use for the lemon-shaped leaves for this quilt. Now we're going to equally center our template on this fabric. So there's an eye down here at the bottom of my tool, and there's an eye up here at the top of my tool. And I know that this edge is now centered on the fabric. On the edge of the fabric, I just want to give myself a little smidge, just a few hairs of fabric here, so that I know I can cut from edge to edge on my fabric with one clean cut. Now, it is important to get the hang of cutting with this 2.5-inch tool. We've done a lot of 2.5-inch leaves up to this point, so you really should have the hang of this 2.5-inch tool. But keep practicing. If you're not getting it, that's okay. You do need to keep practicing with every single tool to get the feel for that curve. Now we're going to slide our tool down, and what we're doing is we're placing the center of this 2.5-inch curve right here, and it's marked with an A. I'm putting that center right on the centering line. So the A is touching that centering line. The A down here is touching, and there's an A at the very end of this tool, so the end of the tool is touching the cut line as well. So we're just kissing right here and here and here, making two perfectly symmetrical lemon-shaped leaves. Let me cut those two, and then we'll continue on forward to finish cutting up our lemon shapes. Now, do you see how I have a little bit of fabric up here? The tool is too short. I actually am going to move the tool, match it up exactly as before with the A on the line, and just finish that cut. If you don't continue this cut and take off these little end pieces, then your serpentine line's going to look a little odd. It's not going to look like a perfect serpentine anymore. And it is important to have that perfect serpentine because when you make your next cut, you don't want those little pieces of fabric attached to these partial lemon shapes. The partial lemon shapes are perfectly fine to use up under our flowers, and we don't want to ruin those partial lemon shapes by having this piece still attached. So we're going to cut from edge to edge on our fabric every single time. Now I'm laying out this next line so that the A is here and the A is here. What we're doing is we're matching peaks and valleys. The valley that we've just cut meets the peak we're about to cut in both places on my tool. We're going to cut again. Now, depending on which color of the leaves you are cutting, now these can be leaves, but they can also be flower petals or other things, so you're not necessarily making them green, but today we're making all of ours in green. When we cut these all in green, these green leaves, we want to find out how many of each we need. Right now we have 1, 2, 3 complete lemon-shaped leaves, but we also have 2 partial lemon-shaped leaves, and often only a partial shape is what you need. Particularly in this block, we will be using the partial leaves as well, so don't think of those as waste or scrap. You're going to be using those partial leaves also. Let's get my tool holder out of the way here so I have room to cut. And I'm going to place the A right down the center line here. So my peak and valley match here, here, and here. And I do want to complete that cut all the way from edge to edge on my fabric. So if I have to move my tool up, I can go right ahead, move it up, place it down with the A right on those centering lines. And there we go. We've got all of our lemon-shaped leaves cut. So there are 5 perfect lemon-shaped leaves and 2 partials. Now we have this little bit of fabric left over here and here. We don't want to waste those, so we're going to go ahead and cut another row of 2.5-inch leaves. Let's get these lemons out of the way. Now we can cut 2.5-inch leaves wherever there's enough fabric left over to cut those. So I call those our little bonus leaves, and we can cut some from this side as well. So there's your waist, and here are all your beautiful leaves that you can use for this quilt. When making our curved edge hearts, we're going to be cutting out the center to make a curved edge heart ring. I'm using template B from my 4-piece set, and I have placed Grace True Grips on both sides of my tool. The reason why we need Grace True Grips on both sides of the tool is we will be turning our tool over during the process of making the curved edge hearts. So we're going to get started with a piece of fabric that's approximately 5 inches by about 8.5 inches. And we're going to fold that fabric the long way so that our 5-inch side is folded in half, so we have about 2.5 inches here. And then we're going to place our tool with the 90-degree marking right here on our fold, and here our small letter M is going to land on the fold. When we're using our small letters, we know that the small letters are on the curved side of the tool, and our capital letters over here are on the straight side of the tool. So whenever I write instructions for you, I will use small letters when I'm on the curved side, and I'll use capital letters if I want this side to be on your fold. So I'm placing the 90 and the small letter M on the fold, which automatically puts my curve on my right-hand side. Now if I'm a right-handed cutter, I'm going to start cutting right down here at the M. But if you're a lefty, you're going to set up your board the exact same way and start cutting up here at the 90-degree marking. So as a left-handed cutter is going around, they're going to be turning their board counterclockwise to cut down to that M. And me as a right-handed cutter, I'm going to start down here at the letter M, and I'm going to cut right up and around to that 90-degree marking. Now I can tell that this blade is a little dull. I didn't hear it getting through all the layers of the fabric. So I'm going to go over that again. Then I'm going to swap out my blade because I know I didn't get through on that first cut. Now, one of the things you can do is to always remove your fabric from the cut instead of removing your tool. That way you know that you've gotten through the cut without moving the tool. And if you try to remove this and it doesn't want to release, go back and recut around that tool and you won't have any miscuts. If you move the tool first, you're going to have a really hard time lining this up again. Now, before I go and cut my next heart right here, I want to turn this tool over. Let's move this out of the way so you can see. I'm going to flip this tool over so that instead of the big circle being up here, I'm going to have the small circle up there. And that's how I'm going to cut out the center portion of that heart to make the heart ring. I always start here on the letter M on my tool, and then I look to make sure this looks symmetrical up here. If you want to, you can look over here, and there's W, X, Y over here. I'm reading these letters backwards. Because I flipped the tool over, the letters are backwards, but I know that between W and a Y there's an X right there, and I use the end of that line and place that on the fold as well. That gives me a perfectly symmetrical heart. Now, the reason why we need the Grace True Grips on the back of our tool, sometimes we can only fit one finger in the center of that tool as we're cutting, and to ensure that our tool doesn't move around, the Grace True Grips do the perfect job. So now we have our heart ring and our bonus heart. Now, I don't want you to throw those bonus hearts away because they're a wonderful applique shape that you can use on future quilts, and we're going to be using them on future blocks as well. So this month, block 6 has the heart ring, and block 7 has 4 of these center hearts. Now you have 12 chances to make 4 perfect center hearts. They do take some practice to get this heart ring perfect. So let's go ahead and practice again. You can watch me make the second heart, and I'm going to do it right down on the fabric so that they nest in together really well. At the very point where I stopped cutting here, you can see my point right there. That's where I'm going to place the 90. And then over here, I'm going to place the M, and let's cut this one out. So make sure you make your adjustments. 90 and M are on my fold of the fabric. I'm going to cut about halfway around, and then I'm going to start rotating. Now remember, if you don't have a rotating mat, you're going to rotate and use the corner of your table, and you will walk around the corner of that table. So now I have my outside heart cut. I'm going to flip, center, and then look at your measurements. The small letter M is here. It's pretty much symmetrical all the way around, and I've got the capital X over here on the fold. So that one looks great. Now, what if your heart rings are all not exactly perfect? That's okay. Sometimes, especially if your blade is dull, when you're cutting that inside of your ring, you're gonna get a few little notches, and I did just on this ring. I got a notch right here where I was cutting because I wasn't going slowly enough. So, if I have a little notch like that, I'm going to take a tiny scrap of fabric, and I'm just going to cut a little filler piece, and I can use that little filler piece under that notch, line them up so that edge looks nice and curved, and then you can go ahead and press that on your applique pressing sheet. So you can fix a little mistake this way, or you can probably get by with it because when you go to buttonhole stitch, those little notches get filled with stitches and you don't even see them. But even I make mistakes when I'm cutting the curved edge heart. So the whole secret is to take your time and cut very slowly with a very sharp blade. The last 2 shapes that we're going to cut for our project are a straight edge heart and a 6-petal flower. And we're going to be using template A from our 4-piece set to make both of those shapes. I'm using the friction marking pen because it goes away with heat. But just to be safe, I'm going to mark on the back side of my fabric. So I'm going to mark around the small side of my template. Now, just to make this easy, you can use the black line right here on your template to mark your hearts. If you're looking for a letter, you're going to use the 90-degree marking and the letter O on your template, but it's so close to that black line, I prefer to just use the black line and then mark around the outside edge of that template from fold to fold. Now I'm going to cut these out with scissors. A really sharp pair of scissors is imperative. So when you open up that little heart shape, it's a perfect little heart. Normally, if I were making these a little bit larger, I would cut these with the rotary cutter. It's only because these are so small with the small side of template A, that's the only time I do not attempt to cut with the rotary cutter. Now on this one, I'm actually going to find it easier to start at that point and to cut right around on the line using my nice big scissors. The reason why I like the nice big scissors instead of a small pair is I can continue to cut the whole length of that scissor and not have to keep opening and closing like I would with a small pair. So you get a cleaner cut when you just keep going around. Now you'll see how I'm offsetting every heart so that they fit in one right next to the other. And you can see it here, but you can see it better on this blue example that we did earlier, where these hearts fit up and down to get the best use out of your fabric. So you can use less fabric to get more hearts. So let me do one more on this piece of yellow here. We're going to use the line on the tool. We can actually slide this tool down so the straight edges here are lined up straight edges together. Then we're going to mark with the friction marker and cut with our scissors. Now the friction markers come in all different colors. This blue one works perfectly well on this fabric, but if you don't have a color that shows up well on your fabric, another thing you can do is to use your iron erasable chalk. I'd like to show you how we're going to make a 6-petal flower from our small Hearts and More tool and a small piece of fabric. This one is 3.5 inches square. We're going to use the small side of this tool and we're going to mark that with a pen or chalk rather than trying to cut that small 1-inch circle with scissors. The Grace Company, their True Cut cutting mat, has a nice 60-degree angle right here. It's marked over on this side, but I know that this is the matching angle that is also 60 degrees. That 60-degree angle starts in the bottom and goes off to my right, and that's the direction you want to place your angle. So it's 60 degrees right here. Now we're going to take our fabric. The fabric needs to be folded so that it is 6 layers at 60-degree angles each. So I'm going to fold my fabric to find the center of this square. So I'm just going to fold it in quarters. And then I'm going to place the center of that square on a straight line that crosses the 60-degree angle. So right here, I could place my corner or I could place it up here, anywhere a straight line crosses that 60-degree line. Now I'm going to unfold my fabric so that it looks like a rectangle, but the center of that square is still on the 60-degree line. I'm going to place a second ruler with a straight edge right next to the fabric. so that it's creating this 60-degree angle here. And I'm going to fold the bottom left-hand corner up to match the edge of my straight edge. I'm going to finger press that line, and then I'm going to fold this last little bit under on that same fold line. So I end up with a triangle that is 6 layers deep. So let me show you that. We've got our fold lines matched up on this side, and if you turn over, we've got our fold lines matched up on this side, and it's very, very precise. So now we have a triangle that is 6 layers, and this right here is a 60-degree angle. We're going to place our Hearts and More tool with the 90-degree markings on the 2 folds of our fabric, here and here. So you can see I've got a 90 here, a 90 here, and the centering line goes right through the corner of my square. Now I'm going to mark this one with chalk because it's a dark color and I'm not going to see a pen marking very well. So I'm going to mark it with chalk using my chalk wheel. And I know that that chalk is going to be a little bit messy, but the chalk can't get under the template. So I've got a nice, crisp, clean line on the inside of that chalk line. And I'm going to cut on that line. And I'm keeping my fingernails really close to where I'm cutting, so I'm getting everything nice and accurate. Nothing is sliding around. Just going to trim off a little bit right there, and that's going to make a beautiful little 6-petal flower. Now when I make my 6-petal flower, I also get a bonus piece. This piece, because it has fusible on it, we're cutting out fused 6-petal flowers. I can fuse this piece onto a background fabric, and then I'm not only going to get my flower, but I'm going to get a bonus piece as well. Now if you wanted to incorporate this bonus piece into a quilt and piece this into a quilt, you'd want to make this piece a little bit bigger so you could have a seam allowance all the way around. And that would be a reverse applique flower here, and here is the applique flower we need for our project here. Let me show you another way to trace your designs onto Misty Fuse, because that might be something you need to do. Not necessarily for this project, but in your future, if you have a shape that you want to trace that can't be cut with my tools, then you'll want to learn how to trace your designs onto the Misty Fuse. One method is to use a regular number 2 pencil and a piece of parchment paper. Now this is parchment paper from your grocery store, and it's not freezer paper, but it's the parchment paper that you bake with. And we're going to draw our design onto the parchment paper with a number 2 pencil. Now what I love about this method is that you don't have to necessarily reverse your design. So if this were, say, an S shape, you're not going to have to reverse that S shape in order to put that on your Misty Fuse. So you're just going to trace your shape, and you can use any colored pencil you'd like to. So if you have a box of good colored pencils, like the Prisma pencils, you're going to use any colored pencil that you think will show up on your fabric. I'm just using a lead pencil right now, and I'm going to take that, that shape, and I'm going to flip it over so the pencil side is down on my fabric. Now I'm going to iron that, and I'm going to have Joanne just go and iron that while I show you another product. Transdoodle is another product that you can use to transfer your designs either on the Misty Fuse side or the fabric side of your fabric. So I'll show you why that's important to know both methods. Although I like to use the parchment paper method, the Transdoodle method actually works whether your design is reversed or not. So once again, I'm going to put an S in the middle of this flower. So you'll be able to see that I'm either reversing or not reversing my design. So I'm going to take the transdoodle paper. The transdoodle paper comes as a package. It's called Transdoodle Junior. And in here are 4 sheets of white, 2 sheets of yellow, and 2 sheets of blue paper. So you're going to take any of those papers, and you might want to do a little test to see which one works best on your fabric. This white I know is going to show up on that dark purple, but so would the yellow and probably the blue. But depending on what color fabric you're using, you might need to choose your color accordingly. The blue doesn't show up particularly well on that dark purple. So let's go ahead and use our white sheet. I'm going to put away the rest of the sheets here and just grab one of the white sheets. Now I'm going to put that white sheet over my fabric, and then I'm going to put my design on top, just like this. Now I'm going to trace that design. Now I put my fabric fusible side down this time. Now that's a choice you get to make. The transdoodle will work on either the right side or the wrong side of your fabric. So I'm just drawing that S right side up. Let me turn it so it's right side up for you on the camera. So I'm drawing that S right side up because I'm tracing on the right side of my fabric. So do you see how that didn't reverse anything? Whereas the parchment paper, I drew the S right side up, and when I iron it and peel it away from the paper, you can just see that black outline here where the Misty Fuse picked up the pencil lead from my fabric. And that S got reversed, but remember we're on the Misty Fuse side of our fabric, so if I cut out that S and then I go to fuse it, it's going to be reading the right way. The first thing I will do when making block 7 is to make my center flower using my darkest color first. So this I believe is color 9. And I don't have my color chart right here. Let me just get that handy so I can tell which colors I'm using. Yes, this is color 9 first, followed by color 6. And the color 6 is going to go on the northwest markings and southwest. Now I'm very careful to make sure that they all match here in the center. I want those to match precisely in the center. Now you can have some fun with this flower. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine. Some people prefer to have a radiating pattern in the middle. Some people prefer to have the light on top, and some people prefer to have the dark on top. I'm going to make mine exactly like my first example, and that has the color 6 on top, so in the northwest, southwest, southeast, and northeast positions, and I had put my color 9 down first. So to me that looks great. They're all matching here in the center, and I'm just going to wiggle those around until they're perfect, and then I'm going to give this a good hot press. Now what I like to use is a credit card to slide up under my work and lift up those edges so that I can put another layer of my leaves underneath. Now underneath I'm going to use partial leaves. Whatever I had left over from cutting 3-inch leaves, those are a lot of partial leaves. I'm going to slip those right underneath here, and we're going to go halfway in between these petals that we have. I can't find my credit card, it's not handy right now. A business card works out great too. But if you just loosen those up a bit, then you can slide these petals up underneath. And I like to use one of the rings here and keep all of these petals on that marking on the ring, so they're all the same distance away. Now I'm going to do every other one with my darker yellow. This is my color 18, and the opposite ones will be done with color 17. Just make sure that they all touch. I think it's a 6-inch line, but this bullseye diagram is not necessarily to scale. So I'm not really using, I'm not going to say it's a certain inch line, it's just the second circle on my bullseye diagram. So go ahead and lay out all of that level below. Because there are 16 petals to this flower, I find it really helpful to make the 8-petal flower first, and we've already made an 8-petal flower in a previous month, so you know how to do that. But once you make your 8-petal flower, just lift up those fused edges, those fused petals, and lay out your next level. And that's looking good. I do want to make sure that I'm centering these between these two, that everything looks centered and symmetrical. And again, it's your flower. You make it the way you'd like to. Give that another good hot press to stick all those layers together. Let it cool for a minute, peel it away, and that part of your block is ready to go. So let me show you the markings that we need to make our heart ring. The first thing you're going to do is mark your diagonal lines, and you have your north, south, east, and west. The problem with this ring is that you have 12 pieces, so you don't have a piece that's going to go on every one of those lines. You're going to put the hearts on north, south, east, and west, and then you're going to have 2 between them. So we need to actually make 2 circles to put our ring on. The first line is going to be marked 4 1/4 inches from your center and mark a line. Then you're going to go 8 1/4 from the center and mark a second line. We're going to do that on the diagonal line as well as our straight lines, 4 1/4, 8 1/4. Once you have those lines marked, you can use your Leaves Galore norm template, the 6-inch side, to connect the dots. And that's going to give you close enough. You're going to get a circle. It's not going to be perfect, but it's close enough if you connect your 2 4 1/4 inch lines with your curve. Then you're going to do the same thing with the 8-inch curve. Again, it's not a perfect circle, but it's going to be hard to find a circle that's exactly the right size. You could try a plate or a platter to see if you can connect those lines a little more smoothly, but that's a good enough approximation of your circle that I think that's going to be sufficient. Now you can see that this first heart that I have has a little boo-boo right here. It's got a little chunk cut out of it. When I was cutting, I didn't do a very good job, and that might be the case for you as well. I don't want you to stress over that. It's okay if some of your hearts are not perfect. Mine aren't either. It's amazing how your buttonhole stitching can solve some of those problems. So I'm placing my hearts north, south, east, and west on that 4 1/4 line in the center, the 8 1/4 line out here. So now I have 4 placed, and we need to place 2 more between each of those. So we are going to go ahead and lay out any color you want to here. Do you see how these 2 are just kissing right here? They're not overlapping by a whole lot, so you see the background. You're going to slide it over until you don't see any background. and just keep these two edges over here on your curve. This center piece goes on the center circle. Then you're going to lay out the next one. Now, we have a good distance right here. This is perfect. These are too far away from each other. So what we have to do is actually go in by about 1/4 of an inch. My circle's just a little bit too big. Let's bring every piece in by about 1/4 of an inch until we find that they all can just link together, just barely kissing on this inside edge. That looks better. So on mine, I actually want to be about 4 inches and not 4 1/4. Every heart that you cut is going to be unique, and each one is slightly different. So if they're not perfect, if they're not fitting precisely, just make sure you bring them all in or out the same amount. So by about 1/4 of an inch in either direction should be enough to make up for any differences in your hearts. Now I'm just about done laying mine out, and I want to make sure that the colors are pleasing, that they're in a good proportion. So some hearts I have 2 and some hearts I have 3. Make sure that they're evenly spaced around. These two I think I'd like to have opposite each other because they are significantly lighter than all the other colors. So I think that they need to be opposite each other. So I think this looks good. These are all overlapping that circle by about 1/4 of an inch. Let's bring that one in a tiny bit. And now I'm just going to adjust by eye to make sure that we have a nice circular shape. Again, if you want to grab a platter or a plate and put it down in the middle here and see if they're all touching that plate, that's a good way to keep a nice round circle. But you know, this is not where we have to be a perfectionist. I think this looks great. So I'm going to go around and make sure the right side of every heart is over the one to its left. Right over left, right over left, and do that all the way around. Make sure everyone is right over left, and then I'll show you how to link these hearts. Right over left, and now we're in good shape. Everyone is correct, and I still have a nice circle. Now we're going to take our scissors, our nice sharp pair of scissors, and we're going to be cutting those hearts just where they overlap. So we're going to take one of these at a time. And when I'm happy with the placement of my hearts and I've made all the adjustments I want to make that circle, I'm going to touch them right in the middle and on the point with my iron. In the middle here and on the point with the iron, the middle and the point. That way these are still loose, under here is still loose, and I can weave in the ends of these pieces. We're making a slit right here where the top piece crosses over the bottom heart. Then I'm going to lift up that bottom heart and tuck this heart under. Do you see where it's coming back together to form a complete heart? And then that link will get hidden by the top fabric. You've switched those two fabrics. Now I'm going to press that joint between them. I'm going to go all the way around my heart in that manner. I'm going to be snipping and tucking those hearts so it makes a beautiful chained heart. After I have made my heart chain, then I'm going to go back and I'm going to find my flower that I made that 16 petal flower. Mine's missing right now, but you saw me make that. And we're going to place that flower in the center of our heart ring. And we're going to make sure that we have these lemon-shaped leaves right on the diagonal lines. Do you see how they go right up between two of my hearts? Keep these all the same distance away from the hearts or away from the center, and then put your 16 petal flower in the middle, and this block is almost done. Before I get started with block 6, I just want to show you a few marking implements that we use to mark our rulers. When I need to mark a straight line on my ruler that I refer to over and over again, I might want to use glow line tape, which comes in 3 different clear colors so you can see right through them, and you can mark certain lines on your tool. And I do that on my Hearts and More tool when I want to make clamshells, and I'm marking out this quarter circle line here on my Hearts and More tool. But these other 2 products are also very useful. They are pointed products. This one is shaped like little arrows, and this one is shaped like a diamond. So you can find a marking on your tool that you want to refer to over and over and over again. And in this case, I'm using the ruler stickers that are shaped like an arrow to point to the 2-inch marking and the 8-inch marking. I could use on the dot repositionable markers the exact same way. I would just point this arrow right at the 2 or right at the 8 here. They're really handy to have when you're making block 6 and you want to measure from the center of your block, so where my 4 patch comes together, and I'm trimming my straight stems here at around 2 inches and 8 inches. And that's how I'm going to know where to place my hearts here and where to place my flowers out here. Then if I want to mark my 4-inch marking, or actually here I'm at 3 3/4, I could use a marking there to place my S and my Z-shaped curves on the 4 horizontal and vertical flowers. The flowers that are on the diagonal, I'm going to be placing the leaves at certain spots here, here, and here, and I could use those arrows to mark these as well. Now it's really nice because these arrows or the on the dot markers are repositionable. So when you need to mark something like leaves and you don't want to use those forever, it's just a temporary marking, you can use those arrows right there. Let's get a 3rd one right there, and it points to where you want your leaves to be placed. That way you have some consistency between all of your different sections of your block. So this is how I've laid out the leaves for block 6, and the measurements are in your written instructions. Then we want to go ahead and lay out the flowers and the hearts. So let me find my little pile of flowers and hearts. Now the hearts that we're using were the center of the hearts that we cut out. We cut the curved edge hearts, and now we're going to use the center of those hearts to make our little center for this block right here. Now, I'm not particularly happy with these colors. I think I'm going to go ahead and switch colors because I have 2 the same, and I don't want 2 the same. So let's go ahead and find a replacement for this one and a replacement for this one, and that way we have 4 different colors of our hearts. If you keep this centered as these 2 hearts come together and just move the hearts in or out as needed so that they all come together right here over the stems. That's the look you're going for in the center. It makes this pretty little shape right here in the center because these hearts are touching right where the stems come together. So fiddle with those a little bit. Make sure your heart points, inside and outside points, stay on the horizontal and vertical line. The flowers are going to be added at the ends of our straight stems. So we're going to go ahead and add a flower here, and one over here, and then one here, and one over here. Now it doesn't matter if your flower is right here between two petals, or I like to twist it so it's on a petal. The only reason why I like to twist it so it's on a petal is so you have a little bit more space here between your leaves. If you're on the space between the petals, this gets too close to the leaves. I could have made my stems a little bit longer to prevent that problem from happening. Once I find the placement that I want for one of my flowers, I'm going to move that arrow sticker. And this is at the 6 3/4 inch marking, and then I'm going to use that same 6 3/4 inch marking for all 4 of my flowers. You'll notice that I've done my buttonhole stitching around all the green design elements before I placed my hearts and flowers. That way I don't have to worry about finishing off those buttonhole stitches. My flowers are going to go right over the buttonhole stitches, and the next stitch will catch those stitches in the green fabric, so I don't have to bury my ends or end my threads in any special way. I hope you're having a great time making my magical garden quilt. If you have any questions, you can find me on the Facebook page, or just ask questions of our other members on the Facebook page. Everyone is happy to help.